Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today for Lesson 9 Q&A. And we're getting near the end of the course. So today we will be covering the lesson number 9 and some of the things that might help you out as you go through that. So let us share my screen here. All right. Cool. Okay, so lesson 9, and two parts to that, as I'm sure everybody knows. We have a building survey that's worth 4 points, and we have that zone 1 integrated design. That's the big one. That's worth 14. So I think what we'll do, I think in my opinion, the building survey is pretty straightforward. We're looking at some local materials that Indigenous people used and what we can learn from them and how we can integrate that into some modern approaches, so-called modern, and what the constraints are. And so I think these are pretty obvious questions here. One thing I did not do is check to see if there was any questions on that Q&A. All right, we're just going to go there right now. Sorry about that. Didn't have my ducks in a row here. I don't think there is any, but you never know until you right. No, there doesn't look like there's any there. Okay. We will just head back to where we were. Cool. Okay, so the building survey, again, I think is pretty straightforward. Does anybody on the call right now have any questions about that? I probably not, but if you do, now's a good time. If not, we will just really focus our energies here on the zone 1 design, which is an important part of your final project, your final design project. So if we go to the discussion board, there's quite a lengthy description here about the inner core, which is that zone 1. So if you're in an urban site, zone 1 is going to be a pretty small portion, most likely, of your landscape. And as you get, say, if you're on an agricultural setting, zone 1 actually might be quite a bit bigger because you are moving around that site a lot more regularly with your work. But that's really what we're after, is zone 1. And again, that's the center of human activity and the things that we want to include here. So of course, we're going to be using our base map, and that is going to be the first element if we look at the template file here. That is going to be on the first page. So where it says existing plan, that could very easily say base plan, because that's exactly what you want to indicate in page number 1 is what the existing conditions are. Okay. So once we have that in place, then we're going to dive into a few items that are listed here. So with your proposed design, what are the goals? And you want to also include a map of that area. So you'll want to take your base plan and identify where zone 1 is within that, and preferably place it on the same page. So if we go to that next page, you can see that there are some example, some labels already sitting there. So this is a spot you'd love, ideally we want to see an overall of the zone 1 and where that's located within your base plan. So that's a nice way to tie those together. But again, we want the goal, and you want to specify the general patterns you're designing and the specific strategies. The next page we're going to look at is the water management plan. So the first map, the first proposed design, is really the overall concept of your zone 1. And then the second drawing here is really dialing into water and how you're going to manage water just within zone 1. Okay, so we don't have to go beyond that. You might want to reference things that are beyond that, but we're not doing any work in this part of the drawing that goes beyond zone 1. Sometimes I will have students, even on acreage property, submit their final design at this point. And, if I understand that it would actually be in some ways kind of tricky to design zone 1 without considering everything else, but there should be some elements that you want to incorporate into this zone that's very active within your property. And that might include rainwater catchment, it could be cisterns, it could be rain barrels, it might be rain gardens, it could be swales, all of these things may fall into your zone 1. So that is, for ourselves, when we do our design work, which I'm sure I've gone over a number of times, water is the first layer that we look at after we create a base plan. And this is, in my opinion, the driving force of most landscapes. And let's see here. So we want to see the flows, where it's all being diverted, both passive and active systems. So a passive rainwater system is like a rain garden, or a swale may be that as well. An active water harvesting is structures like cisterns and rain barrels. They're intentionally being held within a vessel that we're going to remove that water from at some point, use it somewhere else. Whereas rain gardens, it's just passively going in there and infiltrating. And for all those that are on sort of in urban situations, I would highly recommend considering rain gardens for your project site if your soils are in alignment with that. And what I'm going to do, I think what I'll do, I'll just show you what we're up to right now. I'm on a project and we're doing a rain garden at the moment, and I can just show you a couple pictures from that. Might be helpful. Let me stop sharing that and we will switch over. Okay, so I'll just give you a very quick intro to what we're doing here. This it's a property that we've been working on for a couple of years. Actually, we did a couple of phases on the back of the property. Now we're working at the front, and this is one of the slopes we're dealing with. Oh, this isn't advancing the way. There we are. So I've taken a lot of useless pictures here, but so basically what we've done is we've stripped this and we've retained it, and then we've brought in some blasted rock here. There's some videos I'm not gonna get into, but we had an excavator on site that's basically placing all of these rocks for us. And fellow did a great job. I've worked with him for about 20 years. And you'll notice that there's some turf back up here. So the whole logic here is once we had retained the slope, we reapplied as much turf as I felt comfortable doing on the slope. And we flipped this upside down and placed it a little bit lower. Let me see if I've got a picture of that. So we put it a little bit lower in the slope, and because it's upside down, once we apply topsoil, that we're not going to get any regrowth from it, but we have some soil biology and soil life within that turf area that we're retaining. Now, you could have said, well, why didn't you just sheet mulch? And yeah, you could do that approach. We could have tarped this area months prior. We didn't have that luxury, but you could do that. There's a couple of ways you could do it, but because we had an excavator on site for these other items, let me just see. So that's kind of the finish. And then what we had to do was a little bit painful. We carefully placed this main line pipe a year and a half ago for the irrigation needs for the property, and we revised our rain garden position. And unfortunately, this irrigation pipe is right in the middle of it. So we had to dig that up. Here's kind of a rough shape of the rain garden, and this is the bottom, and then this is sort of a we'll call it a zone 2 of the rain garden. It's this shelf that goes up, and this line here represents the top of the flood height. So it gets a little more obvious when we're digging it out, and you can see this is all nice, friable, high, sandy, gravelly material. And that's what we encountered when we put the mainline piping in, which you can see right here that we've disconnected. But we did run into a challenge when we got to the very bottom. Those won't be very meaningful for you. When we got to the very bottom of our trench, we started to hit some heavier material. When we got down here, we got some sticky clay. So the last couple of inches of our excavation, we have an impervious surface, which I was not too pleased about, especially because all the material that came out of the rain garden is now off-site. It's already been hauled away. So we had to come up with a little bit of a fix. So what we've done, we had to retain the very top here because this is probably a 10 to 12 degree slope, and rain gardens, just like ponds, have to be flat, right? So we have established the base here, which is in a little bit of clay, and we've ended up putting in a perforated pipe. And at the end of the pipe is a sliding gate valve that we can open and close. So in the winter months, that valve is going to be open, and all of our rain coming in that does not infiltrate out the sides here is going to get jettisoned into a nearby ditch. And then during this time of year, during the growing season, we are going to close that valve up, and then this can operate as we had hoped. So it's a little bit of a, and you can see here, we're reconnecting our main line, which for us, we use HDPE pipe, so a water service pipe, and use these lovely couplers, very expensive, but really easy and effective. And basically that's kind of what we were left with. And then we're putting in a little bit of gravel and some fabric over it. And then we have a clean out fitting here. So this will be below grade, and we'll be able to clean that drain out if we ever felt we had to do that. So it's just with any drain you ever put in behind a wall or whatever, having a clean out is a really good idea for longevity. And let's see if there's anything else that's meaningful here. We put fabric in behind the this blasted stone because we don't want soil pouring out any little cracks. And we've got to redo this a little bit, fine tune it, but that's kind of where we're at. Again, this is all ready for soil, and we'll be doing that tomorrow. We have a slinger truck coming in to shoot soil into this bed, and we have all our irrigation in place. So yeah, I thought that might be of interest. I know I'm just skimming through it quite quickly because I don't want to spend all day on that, but we'll go back to the lesson. So yeah, rain gardens, definitely worth considering. And let's see here, get my little pointer tool back. If we go to the next page, we're seeing the, let's take a look at that next template page. There's the water management. So this is set up a little bit different. Let's see, we have existing, then we have the overall concept, and then we have our water layer. Sorry, back up there. We have our statement of purpose and our goals and the proposed zones for the landscape. And then we get into water. And then we get into soil fertility here. So some strategies. How are you going to improve soil? What are you going to do specifically? Some, any composting strategies you might have. So we want to hear all about that. And then the vegetation itself. So the overall concept. Well, let me just give you an example here, just so it's clear. I'm just bringing up recent urban design we just finished.
Hey, Jamie, I hate to interrupt you. Is this the final concept design or is this the zone one? Because these pages don't quite look familiar.
Yeah, it's supposed to be zone one. Oh, I'm sorry. That is, that explains why some of these slides didn't make any sense. Thank you very much, Carly. Let's go back and do the right thing here. So zone one, with the zone one highlighted. Then we're going to get into specific existing conditions here. And you can describe where some of your photos are. And then we're going to look at zones themselves, the microclimates, and your cross section of zone one. And then talk about the existing conditions and some of those proposed patterns that you have. And here is an example. That might be an edible windbreak, capturing overland water, creating a solar bowl in a cold spot. And then, of course, we have that water strategies section. And then the proposed overall plan, including earthworks. So this is where we're taking a look at the zone one design concept as a whole. And then any additional elements, you know, you might be putting in a, like for instance, where I live, we're going to put in an off-grid outdoor kitchen, right? So that would be in our zone 1. And if we were doing a zone 1 design, that would be shown, and that sort of thing. So then we can get into energy here, if that is pertinent. Yeah, thanks for that, Carly. So we don't need to cover anything next next time with the concept plan. These do tend to overlap. Like, honestly, I don't, when we design landscapes, I don't just design zone 1 and then figure out what's going on beyond it. We tend to do this sort of integrated approach, and then we could identify zone 1 for sure. And that may be what you find you have to do in your case. It may be really difficult to determine what is going to happen exactly in zone 1 without going beyond it a little bit. So that could be in terms of your water management. That could be in terms of your access. So there's several things going on there. You know, for instance, you wouldn't want, say, a chicken coop in your zone 1. You can get away with that at the edge, but you certainly wouldn't want it, you know, at your back door, for instance. That's not really gonna, I don't think that would be great for most people with potentially noise, and shouldn't be any smell, but there's potential for that. So that you may need to know where that is in terms of the big picture. So take that with a little grain of salt. We're asking you to do this to sort of isolate zone 1, but if you were doing this for a client, you may not take that approach, right? And I think what you'll probably find that if you go through that module section and there's the 4 instructors design process, they're going to be very, very different. And for any of you going forward with your work beyond the class, you'll probably find that you find your own process that really works for yourself and your clientele. But having an example to start with is a great idea. And of course, in this program, having you isolate the zone 1 is really useful in that it is, you know, the most important zone, and it is worth giving some serious consideration to. And that is, what are you going to do within that zone 1, and what elements do you want to see there? So where we live, even though we're on acreage, right out our back door, we have a kitchen garden. So there's herbs, there's salad greens, there's things for, you know, quick harvest. And when we get a little further out, we have more food crops, but they're not necessarily things that we need to access daily. We might have to monitor them daily, but we don't have to, you know, for instance, a potato patch once planted and, you know, you're monitoring it, you're not harvesting it on a daily basis. So let us just take a look at one of the examples here that's in the module section of the program. Just get to zone 1. So I'm not, well, we'll take a look at the building survey. This is actually pretty fascinating, especially anybody on the West Coast. You know, this is typical of the kind of communal life that the First Nations or Aboriginals would live. It's just fascinating. And now we're all in our own little boxes and on acreages. So it's a very, very different lifestyle. and culture, no doubt. So here we have our zone 1 and existing conditions, some site images. The base plan has been shown here as well. Zone 1 has been indicated with this box. And as you can see, the images really, really help to bring the base plan to life. And here we go into the existing conditions and the goals. So this person's goal was to really enrich their outdoor experience and some shade and a winter evergreen vista. And this is a nice touch here. They've shown some of the sight lines from their house that they want to maintain, which is wonderful. And you can see this is already in place, but you can see what a smart design this is right out of the gate, in that we have water flows coming towards the house and they're being intercepted by this water management, whether that's it looks like a swale, or it might be an off contour swale. So it's also could be called a conveyance swale. So the water is being moved along somewhere well away from the foundation. And then patterns and strategies here. So they're looking for shade and view, and they want to sink water, capture and sink it. And they want this evergreen view from the indoors and their dining area. Strategies. So strategies to work with those patterns. Those are pretty straightforward. And then this is a nice little detail where we can see with the base plan exactly where zone 1 is. And then the legend, of course, and all of the pertinent information. But in some ways, we have a kind of a micro, well, we have some details that have been added here that are showing us that the winter winds and some of the summer winds and these water flows and sight lines. So, some sector compass information that got placed here, which is really useful for someone looking at the design that doesn't know the site. So if that's one thing that I would impress upon everybody as you're, whether that's your design for this class or if you end up doing any designs for others, is if you can sort of objectively look at what you're doing and consider if somebody didn't know this site and they were looking at this, does this information help them? Is it giving them the full picture? And I would say between these two pages, we're getting a really good idea of the context of the site and what the goals are and what this person's trying to achieve. So here's their water management section, and they dive into that. So they have perimeter drains going to a pond. They have some gray water they're going to manage, and they also have micro irrigation. And then a little bit of a detail what's going on with their gray water. And, we capture gray water and reuse it in a very simple method. It's really just a bucket under the sink, and can be a little bit dangerous. You got to monitor that. Here you can actually get some plumbing in place to divert it and have it a little more planned. We haven't gone there because I can't really divert it out into the landscape very easily where our sink is located. And again, here's a detail on a swale and the whole premise behind that. So these strategies look great: micro irrigation and some shade and a swale and gray water diversion. And then we get into the proposed plan itself, which is really an overall. And we're seeing overall what they're doing with the structure, with a number of different plants. These plants, there has some images for them. which is always really helpful, as well as the plant legend. And, personally, I don't like plant legends. That's very personal. I understand the need for them here because otherwise we would have even more labels and call outs, and it would get way too busy and very difficult to decipher. Yeah, that's about it here. So, there's no doubt this is really well done and very easy to understand and very clean. The only thing, of course, for my brain, I have troubles with legends. I like to have labels and then specific symbols that so I just have to label one symbol and you can follow where the rest are. But that's just my approach, and our software lets us do that. Some of the additional elements. So obviously there's this privacy issue they want to screen. That's a creative way of showing it. They want to show arbor over a dining area that gets quite hot. And I love this wood chips filled swale. We've done this a number of times. These are wonderful. Really nice approach with that. And then there's the rock filled spillway, which of course, as you can see here, there would be more maintenance because you're going to have a vegetation that will want to start growing in this versus the wood chips where you're not going to get anything. And then some inspiration from a kiwi fence. And then the person went into their SWOT analysis here. So that is a little bit about that example. Let me just show you. I'll just show you one thing here that we just recently finished up, and it's not a zone 1 design, but it does give us a little bit of this a little design package we did. So we do a sector compass, and then this is our water plan. Whoop. So in this design, we have a wood chip filled swale, and we have a rain garden, and we have an outdoor dining area with a solid roof that's capturing rainwater as well. So there's a number of things going on there and some calculations. How much water is going to hit the property and the roof, and how much we can expect to capture into these structures. So in total, there's 97,000 liters. So if we divide that by 4, so that's around 25,000+ gallons. So that's substantial. And then we take a look at access. So this is strictly just the access and any outdoor living areas. And we're reconfiguring this walkway because there's going to be a guest house here. And then this is our sort of overall concept. Oh, sorry, this is soil layer. Overall concept is right here. So we do water access soil, and with our soil, it's really about the vegetation, not specifics on it, but what we're hoping to do. So we have an outdoor dining area surrounded by annual vegetables, and this is all perennial edible and medicinal plantings. And then we get into the concept and all the appropriate labels. And then we do a planting plan. And in this case, we separate the woody plants from the herbaceous plants, just so we have a really clear idea of the proportion of both. And I also gray out the other so we can see how much woody structure we're going to have. And then, of course, there's an overall and a plant list below. And just some details here with the structure and and the patio, and then the rain garden and swale. So yeah, that's just a little bit of added info there. So let us take a look at, again, we didn't have any questions today on our Google document. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask about that Zone 1 assignment? Is that,
Good morning, everyone.
oh, hi Lola, how are you?
Well, I'm doing so. I am a little sick, but I
Uh-oh.
have a question.
Sure.
So I have an area in my garden where everything is going to be edibles. Only one section could be actually zone 1, but
Mhm.
I have decided that everything is zone 1 because all of them are berries and different herbs and veggies. Is that okay, even though a section of that is not so close to the house?
Yeah, do you think you're going to be, well, I guess it's all about the traffic patterns. Do you feel you're going to be visiting these other areas, daily or multiple times a day?
Well, what
Probably. Yeah.
happened, some of them are berries. Only a certain time of the year they will have berries. So,
Right.
but there will be herbs and other things all around. So for me,
Yeah.
even though, and there is a path, so for me, everything is zone 1. Is that acceptable, or I should concentrate in the area closer to the home?
Well, you know what? I could probably, let's find your, I'm going to find your drawing and we'll bring that up. Just got to bear with me. Sorry you're not feeling well.
Thank you.
All right. I didn't find it there. I'll just have to look at the last assignment. Okay, where is your base plan? Aha. Well, we'll take a look at that now. We will share screen with that. So if we look at your plot plan here, Lola, it's reminiscent of it's quite typical what we see these days, where you have a fairly small lot compared to the footprint of the house. So for you, I would say yeah, it's quite possible a very large portion of your property would be zone 1. Yes. Now, I don't know if I would say every square inch of it would be, and you'd just have to consider whether you would be visiting these areas. Let me just get your zone map here. And it might be kind of, there we are. So on your zone map, initially you had your zone 1s here. So you're thinking they may go out more, hey?
Yes.
So again, if your daily visitation is going to be zone 1. And if it's a little bit misleading here in that 1 to 5 times a day, 3 times a day. If I was going somewhere 3 times a day, it would be a zone 1 for sure. If I'm going somewhere, say multiple times a week, I'm sure you're going to end up with just 2 zones on your property, like 1 and 2. I can't imagine you're going to have 3 or 4, just given the size of the lot. Does that help you out, Lola?
Yes, I just added 3 or 4 because those are places where there are evergreens or bushes that I don't need to do anything with them. It's just
Sure.
they are there for landscaping. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that will help. That was helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I hope that you're feeling better soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So does anybody else have anything they want to chat about in terms of this assignment or anything else? Carly, go ahead.
Hey, Jamie, I just have a quick question. When it comes to the plan of the annual garden beds, do you actually want everything in its place for the annual garden beds, like have your tomato section, peppers, potatoes, whatever? Or since, I mean, technically that would be changing every year.
Mhm.
Is that something that I should go ahead and include into the zone one now, or just kind of put icons in and just say annual garden vegetables?
Yeah, you could, if you wanted, you could say annual vegetable garden, like you said, and you could make a condensed list of what you have planned for there, but I wouldn't
Okay.
get too worried about exact locations of every type of vegetable that you, and in all likelihood that would change anyways. Although you may have some specific spots, like we have specific areas for tomatoes, that nice little
Mhm.
microclimate, but everything else is, subject to change.
Okay.
So, yeah,
All right. Thank you.
sure. We've got a few moments left if anybody else wants to chat about anything. If not, we'll call her a day and get on with other things here. So totally up to you guys what you want to do.
Hey, Jamie, it's Mackenzie.
Hi.
I don't have, I don't know if I have an exact question. I'm kind of just struggling with kind of, I guess, determining my zone one because, my site, it's like every time I go up, it's different because they just bought it in fall of last year and they're obviously developing it as I'm kind of coming up with my plan as well. And the other part of it as well is like this is a plot for like it's multi-generational. So there's like multiple homes on the plot. And so I'm kind of like still trying to determine, and they don't really know either, like what their kind of patterns of living are yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one house is for the brother and he kind of has his zone. And then, the other brother is just starting to build his house on another part of the plot and hasn't really even, there's not even like roads really built yet. So I'm kind of just, I guess, struggling with it because like nothing's really determined and they all kind of have their own zones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of don't really know what to ask, but I guess I'm just kind of trying to make my best guesses, if
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't really, know exactly. I mean, the general center of the plot, like the top of the slope, is where they spend most of their time, but in terms of like where they want everything, I mean, they're kind of like up in the air, they're not, I don't know what I want yet. So um
Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah, I'm not really asking a question. I'm just kind of struggling with it. Um,
Yeah, no problem. Well, let's look
yeah,
at your drawing here.
okay.
And this basically what your current zones would be. And I totally get it. Like if you were doing
Yeah.
a brand new build, kind of like
Hmm.
Lola's situation, really. It's a new home,
Right.
hasn't
Right.
she hasn't had a lot of time there yet. So it's
Right.
difficult to know. Um, there's a
Yeah. So
couple,
like even here in this, like in this zone map I did a few weeks ago, like it's already changed since then.
sure.
Like if you look over into the left side of it where there's that little building, it's a tool shed with some little trees surround. Yeah, exactly there. The primary owners have just now actually they just built out a foundation for a yurt where
Hmm.
they're going to be living kind of off to the right of that, or actually off to
Hmm.
the left.
Hmm.
And so like that's still in construction, and that just happened since I even made this map. So we don't really have I mean, it's just kind of torn up earth, and it's like a construction site, really. And it's also difficult because like it is wild. I mean, most of the property we still can't even access. I mean, it is so wild with vegetation.
Right.
And it's hard for me to determine every single plant species, like where it exists, because it is so wild. And I mean, I went up there this weekend. It was the first time I was even able to start to see like plants, because the snow had just melted. So like my garden plan for the garden plan we did for the last assignment, I really just I can't even get into that area because it's so thick. I can't determine, like, I mean, I think they're going to have to like, I basically was just like, let's like just tear up this whole area and use the existing plants as mulch and stuff. Because I can't even determine really what's going on in there because it's so thick. So I guess I'm just kind of struggling with that a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, it's tough.
It is. It is tough, and you know, if you go on and design for other people after the course and over a number of years, it may get easier. Like we definitely do design work for homesteads where there's nothing there, there's no house, and in some ways that's preferred. It does get tough to visualize, but there are, you know, I guess we rely on some of our software to help us with that. I can see what you mean. There's definitely snow there. So when we're looking at the zones, you know, just look at it as a current, you know, as an exercise. So if there's a yurt here now, then you know that there's going to be a center of activity around that. So there may be multiple zone ones on the property, and depending on the arrangement being multi-generational, those may connect and they may not, right? So, you know, a family member may say, well, this is our yurt and this is our space, and, you know, we don't want they may establish a boundary. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like we're in a similar situation where I live. We're on 5 acres, but there's my aging parents and my wife and myself. We live under the same roof, so there's boundaries there, right? Because otherwise, you know, you don't have your own space. So you may find that happens, that there's these little zone 1 pockets, but if they, you know, if all of these buildings or centers of activity are well used by all throughout the day, then boom, that's, you know, you could interconnect all those. And it is an
I think that's what I'll end up doing. I guess I was just, you know, trying to kind of wrap my brain around it and kind of fit it into, I think I'm just trying to, it's hard to kind of fit it into like a traditional, like what I expect like the zones to lay out as. And I think so I guess that's where I've kind of been like stuffed up where
it'll probably be quite a work in progress. You know what I mean? As things develop, you'll probably adjust stuff. And, you know, if you're looking at zone 1, the one real helpful thing there is looking at elements that you want. So I see there's, you know, woodshed, right? So you obviously wouldn't want to stick your woodshed in zone 3 or 4 because of just the travel, the wasted energy. So it does really help in terms of determining where elements are going to work well within the landscape. So that's one of the biggest parts I find that's helpful with zones is, you know, if you want a chicken coop, it's a very helpful guideline to where that may be best suited. You know, you're going to have
Right.
to visit it 2 or 3 times a day, and you don't want it too far away. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
don't,
I kind of just wanted to like kind of, I guess, flesh that out or talk that out. So, okay.
and
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
yeah, no problem. And this is, you know, like I say, this is a ongoing, you know, I find even designs we do for others when we're on that project I was showing you that we're currently installing, you know, changes
Mhm.
happen daily. So we get there day one, all of a sudden the rain garden's going to shift. So, and be open to that. I would be. I would encourage everybody to be open to observation and making changes. And that is going to yield a much better result rather than sort of getting fixed on a plan. So yes, I want to
Yeah.
put this here. I've got it on paper, and even though I have a bit of unease about it, I'm still going to put it here. Well, you might find that that doesn't work out terribly well in the long run. So
Mhm.
yeah, making changes. And it sounds like with this property, some of that main infrastructure is going in. So that,
Mhm.
in my, you know, from my perspective, that's where you'd want to really focus your energy, is building in and around there. And then,
Mhm.
you know, some of these other outer areas, it may not really
Mhm.
be clear to you for
Right.
a while. And, you know, do your
Right.
best, but
Mhm.
be accepting that those could change
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
better.
for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to chat about? We're right at 10 and I um, have lots to do today, but I'm happy to answer anybody's questions. I don't want to leave anybody hanging here. So it looks like we're all good. Okay. Well, I will wrap her up here. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. It was great to run through lesson number 9 with you, and I really look forward to seeing your Zone 1 concepts on next Monday. And if you find you get stuck with anything between now and then, don't hesitate to drop me a note. You can do that in the discussion board or in the Q&A board. You can also directly email me. Now, because we're on a job site this week, I probably wouldn't reply instantly. It might take till that evening, but yeah, don't hesitate to ask any questions as you go along. So thank you again for all your time, everyone. And we'll really look forward to seeing your work next week. So everybody have a great week and take care.
Thank you, you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
Jamie.
Bye-bye. Yeah, goodbye, Carly. I hope you're feeling better, Lola.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.